Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is the first episode of 2026 for my weekly series where I cover the new metal releases that dropped over the weekend.
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
We've got an incredible lineup today ranging from legendary punk pioneers celebrating their 50th anniversary to brutal death metal from Romania, progressive gent from the Netherlands, and everything in between. Today I'm covering 9 albums that span multiple genres including punk rock covers, progressive metal, industrial pop metal fusion, power metal, classic hard rock, old school death metal, doom, and stoner rock, South American thrash, and traditional heavy metal. Whether you're into vintage sounds or modern brutality, there's definitely something here for you. So let's dive right in and start with number 1. Kicking off our list is a very special release from The Damned. 2026 marks their 50th anniversary year, and they hold the distinction of being the first UK punk band to ever release a record. Their single, New Rose, actually beat the Sex Pistols' Anarchy in the UK by a month, which is a pretty cool piece of music history. To celebrate these milestone events, they released Not Like Everybody Else, which is a covers album featuring songs that inspired the original 4 members back in the 70s. The album is also a tribute to original band member Brian James, who recently passed away. Brian was the group's dominant songwriter on their first 2 albums, so it's a really meaningful release. What makes this even more special is that it's a recording reunion. The band lineup for this album hasn't been together since 1995. Rat Scabies is back on drums for the first time in 40 years alongside Dave Vanian, Captain Sensible, Paul Gray, and keyboardist Monty Oxymoron. I'm probably mispronouncing all of those. But the album captures the urgency and energy of 1970s punk while staying rooted in the northern soul and garage psychedelia of the 1960s and early 1970s that these guys grew up with. I personally really enjoyed the album, even though I never listened to The Damned before. I recognized most of the songs they covered. My favorite tracks were Summer in the City, which is a cover of the Love and Spoonful song that was also covered by Joe Cocker. This was a pretty fun, upbeat cover that stayed pretty close to the original. Another standout was Gimme Danger by the Stooges, which is arguably one of the first punk rock songs ever, or one of them, so it's cool to see they pay homage to that. And finally, See Emily Play, the Pink Floyd cover. I'm a big Pink Floyd fan, especially their early psychedelic era, and I thought they did a great job with this one. I don't listen to a lot of punk rock, but I thought it was a cool album. My score is 7 out of 10. Moving on to number 2, we have Textures with their album Genotype. When Dutch math metal pioneers Textures disbanded in 2018, they left a void in the progressive metal community worldwide. 6 years later, the band has risen once again with a long-awaited new album through K-Scope Records, and they're also returning to the stage with an extensive European tour. Genotype serves as the conceptual counterpart to their 2016 album, Phenotype. For nearly a decade, fans speculated about whether this album would ever exist, but that's what we're getting, and it's not just a collection of unfinished ideas from the past, it's something entirely new. The idea, or the title, Genotype, it's still fitting. Its genotype defines the genetic blueprint of an organism, so this record captures the DNA of Texture's rebirth. After a 7-year hiatus, the band delivers a revitalized and more impactful sound. It was self-produced according to the band's DIY mentality and mixed by Forrester Savell, who worked with bands like Carnival and Dead Letter Circus. Actually, Carnival have an album that's coming up, I think, in a couple of weeks. But anyway, lyrically, this album gives voice to those who often go unheard in society, silent minorities, introverts, people with autism, those wrestling with internal struggles. Genotype is, at its core, an ode to them. One track, Vanishing Twin, reflects the fear of not belonging and feeling unheard. Inspired by personal experience, explores the rarely discussed Vanishing Twin syndrome. Personally, I've never listened to this band before. I was familiar with the name. I had this album as a promo, so I was able to listen to it early. The opening track, Void, was very dreamy and spacey. It made you feel like you're floating in space, but relaxed and fearful at the same time. At the Edge of Winter had some strange electronic sounds before going into this heavy, progressive sound with pummeling riffs mixed with futuristic sounds. Vanishing Twin was a key track for me. Lyrics make you think about the concept, and the song has a very futuristic sound. There are lots of sound textures in the song, no pun intended, and the vocals are powerful and emotional. My score, 8 out of 10. At number 3, we have Poppy with Empty Hands, her 7th studio album released through Sumerian Records. The album was preceded by 3 singles, Unravel, Blue Sky, and Guardian. Poppy premiered Blue Sky at her concert in Worcester, Massachusetts back in September 2025. That same month, she collaborated with Courtney LaPlante of Spiritbox and Amy Lee of Evanescence on a standalone single called NW, which is not on an album, even though it's a really great song. In October, she released Unravel as the lead single and announced the Constantly Nowhere tour, which kicked off in Brisbane, Australia on January 20th. Empty Hands features 13 tracks, produced and co-written by Jordan Fish, who previously worked with Poppy on her 6th album, Negative Spaces, another great album. I remember when that one came out. According to the press release, the album features elements of industrial music and pop sensibilities with moments that call back to Poppy's surrealist roots with her signature uncanny machine-like voice. Now for me personally, I liked it much more than I thought I would. I think it's her best album in a while, possibly her best overall, but only time will tell. The opening track, Public Domain, filled with electronic sounds and a cool tribal drum beat, with pop-infused vocals reminiscent of Britney Spears. That's what I got from it. Blue Sky, one of the singles, sounds similar to Spiritbox, and she does awesome screams on this track. Guardian, another single, had cool guitars, more of a pop sound, but also heavy. Again, reminiscent of Spiritbox, which I found a lot of the songs kind of reminiscent of Spiritbox, but there's some weirder stuff here. For example, Unravel is very spacey and electronic with pop elements. Eat the Hate, that's one of my favorites. It had this grunge and punk sound, reminiscent of the band Hole. The title track, an album closer, Empty Hands. This is Poppy going full extreme metal, reminiscent of like brutal death metal or grindcore, as probably the heaviest I've ever heard her on any of her albums. I really like this. My score, 9 out of 10. Okay, I still have a lot more albums to talk about. These are going to be lesser known bands, kind of like underground stuff, but definitely check them out, so stick around for all of that. Coming in number 4 is Death Dealer with Reign of Steel. So Death Dealer is an American power metal supergroup formed in 2012. They're known for their high energy traditional heavy metal sound, and they have influences like Manowar and Judas Priest. And the band originated as an online collaboration between guitarist Stu Marshall and vocalist Sean Peck. And they later recruited Ross the Boss from Manowar and bassist Mike LePond from Symphony X and drummer Steve Bolognese. And they transitioned from file-sharing demos to live shows in California and Mexico by 2013, and they built a reputation for these really explosive performances. This album, Reign of Steel, is their 4th studio album. It has 10 tracks. It's relentless power metal with themes of war, fantasy, and dystopia. And the standout tracks are Assemble, Devil's Triangle, Bloodbath, Raging Wild and Free, and they have really big, towering vocals, really high precision guitar riffs, and lots of energy. But despite all of that, I was expecting a little more from this. I'm a big fan of Manowar, but it's not too bad. It's cheesy, as you would expect. Opening track Assemble has fast-paced guitar riffs, big soaring vocals. Devil's Triangle, more of a mid-paced rocker with cool harmonized guitars and traditional heavy metal sound. Riding on the Wings is a typical heavy metal song with a melodic lead guitar work. Bloodbath was one of the heavier songs with very fast double bass drumming and almost thrash metal sound. And I thought that song, like with the high-pitched vocals, kind of reminded me of the band Overkill, so if you like something like that. Raging Wild and Free, that's kind of more like Manowar-style power ballad. Compelled is a slower track with heavy, almost doom metal guitar riffs. So overall, not too bad. It could get better with repeat listens, but for now, 7 out of 10. Next is the band Helix with Scrap Metal, the 15th studio album from the legendary Canadian hard rock band, officially released today through Paris Records, and the release date coincides with the birthday of the band's late longtime drummer, Greg Fritz Hines. The album serves as a bridge between the band's iconic 80s era and their modern work. Produced by Aaron Murray and Helix bassist Darryl Gray, the album features 5 previously unreleased songs that retain the classic 1980s Helix sound, and many of these began as unreleased demos or unfinished demos from 1988 intended for their Back for Another Taste sessions. The lead single, Stuck in the 80s, was written with guitarist Sean Kelly. It reflects the band's commitment to their roots, and the remaining tracks are a collection of classic or rare songs from previous releases. So there's some new stuff and some of it's compilation. It's one of those bands I've heard about, but I wasn't really familiar with any of their albums. I've probably heard some of the singles back in the day. I'm pretty sure I've seen them on Headbangers Ball at one point, but there's really nothing I remembered from this band. But with that being said, it's a fun album. It has a very retro sound. And that's understandable since most of these tracks were released back in the 80s anyway. The opening track, Stuck in the 80s, has a very big arena rock sound with lyrics about wanting a time machine to go back to the 80s when music was good. Has a very big chorus. Sounds like the kind of song would go over great in a live setting. Fast and Furious sounds like the title says, very upbeat, fast-paced heavy metal. Pretty Poison sounds like something like glam metal that's very slick and polished. Hot, Heavy, and Wild, that's one of the most 80s sounding song titles I've ever heard. Reminiscent of Quiet Riot or Twisted Sister. And there was Jaws of the Tiger. That one reminded me of early 80s Def Leppard. Overall, a very fun, retro-sounding album. My score, 7.5 out of 10. Okay, now we move into heavier stuff. Now, number 6 is Cadavrul, and the album is called Necrotic Savagery. So this band, Cadavrul, they are a veteran death metal band from Romania, and they've been really active in the underground scene since 2005. They play old school death metal. There's lots of raw energy and technical brutality. Before this release, the band was known for their 2006 demo, Forensic Nightmares, and their debut full-length, Into the Morgue, released in 2013. Necrotic Savagery is the band's second full-length album, which arrived along 13 years after their debut. Released today through collaboration between Loud Rage Music and AXA Valhalla Productions, and the album tracked at Crossover Sound Studio in Romania, mixed and masters at Digital Demon Forge in the UK. Artwork created by renowned metal artist Constantine Cinoreno, and known for his work with bands like Ghost and Napalm Death. And this one was better than I was expecting. It's a short album, 10 tracks, 30 minutes long, just old school death metal. They're not reinventing the wheel, but they're doing it pretty well. The album opens with an intro track, goes into Attack of the Cursed. Has some sick and vile guitar riffs and deep guttural vocals. Vocals are mixed low and makes the guitar stand out. Another song, Mars Funeral, a little slower, lots of heavy riffs. Devoured has an old school death metal sound with sick sounding vocals and galloping guitar rhythms. Torch the Bodies had some awesome bass guitar. Overall, it's very meat and potatoes sounding death metal, but they do it very well, and it's just a really good death metal package. So I give this one 8 out of 10. At number 7, we have Temptress with the album Here. Temptress is a heavy rock doom metal trio based in Dallas, Texas, founded in 2019. And the group consists of veteran musicians, Kelsey Wilson on guitar and vocals, Andy Kuba on drums and vocals, and Christian Wright on bass and vocals. This sound is a fusion of doom, stoner rock, grunge, and post-rock. This album was released through Blues Funeral Recordings. It's the band's sophomore full-length album. The band describes it as a deeply personal effort, reflecting the growth in varied influences, and the album blends crushing grooves with ethereal atmospheres. After they formed in 2019, they released a self-titled EP and followed it with their debut full-length called C in 2023. So the first album is called C, and this album is called Here, if you didn't notice that. But they have a really good work ethic. They perform 200 shows across North America, and they open for bands like I Hate God, Chemist, Royal Thunder. For me personally, the album's not too bad. They're listed as stoner metal on some sites, but like I was saying before, when I read their bio, they call themselves like a fusion of doom metal and other styles. But either way, it's pretty cool. They're a trio. It's one man and two women. So some songs have female vocals, others have male vocals, and I thought that's a cool aspect of it. And the album starts and ends with two instrumentals that are very trippy and spacey. The first main song, Narrows, is pretty cool. Has a little bit of a Middle Eastern sound with the male vocals. Edge a little faster pace with female vocals. These Walls, more of an upbeat, grungy, almost Nirvana-sounding song with male vocals. Overall, not too bad. Stoner metal is not one of my go-to genres, but I think it's something I can get into. It probably gets better with repeat listens. For now, 7 out of 10. I have two more albums, and this is Deathraiser with Forged in Hatred. Deathraiser is a Brazilian thrash metal band from Leopoldina, Minas Gerais. Originally formed in 2006 under the name Merciless, and they officially changed the name to Deathraiser in 2009. Forged in Hatred was released yesterday through Extreme Music and the band's second full-length album, following their 2011 debut, Violent Aggression, after a nearly 15-year gap in studio releases. The album is characterized by aggressive old-school thrash metal with high-speed riffs, and it can be compared to early Creator, Dark Angel, early Sepultura. And this is a 34-minute album with 9 tracks. So for me personally, I thought it's really cool. South American thrash metal, that's something I really enjoy. The album opens with Severe Atrocity. It's fast-paced thrash with intense strumming reminiscent of early Sepultura. Vocals are dark and evil sounding. Primitive Medicine, that's very fast-paced. It reminded me of like early Creator. Everything Dies, another thrasher, slowed down a little bit and very fast and energetic. Corporation Parasite, another good one. Lots of those dive bomb guitars and old school guitar riffs. Maybe more reminiscent of Bay Area thrash metal. I was thinking early Testament. But the album's very good. They're not reinventing the wheel. They're delivering high quality thrash metal, very old school. So I was thinking, if you're somebody, if you didn't like the recent Creator album because you wanted something a little more old school, I think this is a good alternative. My score, 8 out of 10. I have one more album, and that's Hellrazer with Serve the Machine. They are a Canadian heavy metal band from Calgary, Alberta, and they have a style mixing classic new wave British heavy metal with thrash and power metal. They are influenced by the greats, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Metallica, so very standard heavy metal and a little bit of thrash. So this is the band's 5th full-length studio album, and recorded at Alchemy Studios in Calgary with producer Jeff Mueller, mixing and mastering handled by Dan Rogers. Album preceded by the single Fight to the Death, inspired by the cage fighting scenes in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. And the band formed in 2004, gained recognition for previous albums including Bone Crusher from 2019, which notably featured vocals from Ralph Sheepers of Primal Fear. For me personally, I like this one. It's the type of music that I really like. The opening track, Fight to the Death, is very fast-paced, lots of guitar riffs. Vocals were harsh for the style of music, maybe slightly reminiscent of Tim Ripper Owens. Penance had guitar riffs, sounded like old-school traditional heavy metal with some pretty cool guitar solos. Another standout track was Defenders of Metal, which has a very cheesy title, but a very old-school sounding track with galloping guitar rhythms. Pulverizer reminded me of modern Metallica, and the album closes with The Eye of the Sahara, which opens with an acoustic guitar playing Middle Eastern melodies before going into traditional heavy metal. Overall, it's good, pure heavy metal. My score, 8 out of 10. And that's all for new metal releases. Since this is the first episode of 2026, I usually redirect you to the previous episode, but I don't have anything from this year. So I will redirect you to my review of the new Creator album, which is pretty cool. So definitely check that out. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Let me know in the comments which of these albums you're most excited to hear. Was there anything I missed? And I will see you next week with more new metal releases.